Hi, everyone. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone in the audience and those of you online who screened this amazingly beautiful film. And I will take my aviators off in a minute, but please I need these to be acknowledged before I do, as a tribute to Dory. Yeah. So, wonderful. I'm so touched by this film every time. So, again, thank you. And I have a new tagline for Julia. Just want to get that out of the way first. So it's Move Over, Joan of Arc. Dory Previn is my new patron saint. So that's that. All right, so the really important stuff is out of the way. So, like I said, we have over 135 or so people who streamed online the film. We have people joining us now for the panel for Mad in America's continuing education, and you can find out more about Mad in America's mission at madinamerica.com. I'm their global liaison. I used to be their arts editor, but now I do just their global network. I knew this was a really important film when I saw it at WFMU and I met Julia. It touched me so deeply, and so here we are. I mean, just boom. My name is Karin Jervert, and I am going to be moderating the panel. I'm a person with lived experience of voices, just like Dory. And I usually include visions as well, so I'm a visions and voices gal, I usually say. I'm an artist, writer, and mad pride activist. And a very large part of my activism is literally just saying that every day, living my life authentically and openly as who I am, like Dory did. Secondarily, the other part of my activism is placing that experience often outside of pathology, outside of psychiatry, psychiatric narrative, and just as a diversity sometimes, and that's my story. I often use the term clairaudient, but that is definitely for another panel, clearly. In my work, I protect the spiritual, creative, evolutionary, and healing aspects of visions and voices and other diverse consciousnesses. I use that term a lot. I encourage people to question the stories we're told, which is why we're here today, because this beautiful story has been told in such a beautiful, different way, and in an empowering way. That's the important part. Stories about diversities can be told in ways that offer belonging, or they can be told in ways that take it away from us. So that's why we're here. So let's dive in really quick with the intros. Sorry, I took a little bit too much time with that intro, but all right. So Jessie, why don't you introduce yourself first, and I'll let you all introduce yourselves. Got mics? Good.
All right. Thank you so much, Karin. Really, really honored to be here. Thank you all for being here. I'll share a little bit about what brings me to the work I do and how I see it kind of connecting to this beautiful film that you made, Julia. So I'm Jessie, and I am also a person with lived experience. I identify as a trauma survivor, and I specify I don't have lived experiences the same as what Dory shared, as Karin shared, but I come to the work of being a mental health liberation activist and organizer through experiences I had growing up, and also through experiences witnessing my older sister navigate the psychiatric system. And the language I would use, I think she experiences what people could also call non-consensus reality. And so it was a really impactful experience for me when I was a teenager visiting her in the psych hospital and seeing the ways that she would express, things that were real to her. Dory spoke really beautifully about this, but maybe other people couldn't see or couldn't understand. And I was really impacted by the way that her expressing that led to her being, quite invalidated and harmed. And so, my journey has been pushing back on those systems and trying to build different approaches. And I'm really consider myself part of the same movements that Karin mentioned. And I'm also a writer and an artist myself, so this film is incredibly close to my heart, and yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, Jessie is a badass, just to say. Emily, you want to introduce yourself?
Emily Hubley. I'm an animator. I did the animation in the film. And it was a real privilege and a joy to work with Dory's characters and her partners.
And I'm Julia Greenberg. I co-directed the film with Diana Dilworth. The film was also produced by Amy Hobby. Emily, our great animator, is here. And I also want to acknowledge our editor, Jen Mackey, who lives in Scotland, and our whole team. And that's it from me.
Awesome. Julie, you're a badass as well. Emily, awesome. Do your poetry snack. Okay, so I want to just get right into the questions. So for Julia, I have the first question for you. So you talked a lot about how Mad Pride, like you ran into Mad Pride by doing this film, telling Dory's story, and in this movement, in my understanding, voice hearers like Dory and I, we find a very personal way, an alternative way of thriving and explaining our differences and diversity. So. The essence of these movements, in my opinion, is that we are positioning ourselves as experts in our experience and our right to tell our own story. So to not have a story imposed upon us, that's really what we're fighting the right to have. In the film, we see Dory doing this, questioning her voices and her experiences through music, trauma work, and visualization. So telling somebody else's story in art is really common, but fraught, right? And you know, I bet you we all wish she was here on stage with us, but she was you had access to her journals, but she was not there to help you tell this story. So can you tell us how you navigated this? What was your North Star, so to say, to honoring her life the way you did?
Thanks. And just quickly, I did get to know Dory at the end of her life and was given the incredibly sacred responsibility of being able to tell her story by her husband and her family. So that's the first thing that I would say, that I started there by developing a friendship, which is a whole other story, which I'll tell you all some other time. Are you jealous? But no, I mean, I think our first intention as documentarians and storytellers was to convey the truth of Dory as we understood it by using the archival materials that we had extraordinary access to and her diaries, and that we wanted to tell the story as truthfully and accurately as possible, but with an obvious slant toward what inspires us about her. And for me, that it's been a 15-year journey of living with this inspiration. She derailed my life in many, many ways. But of course, we were very sensitive. And I also want to say that it's not as if we found Mama Max and Lion on a couple of pages in her journals. These are tens and thousands of pages of dialogue with Mama Max and Lion. There's Amy also. Amy does not appear in the film because she's not in the period that we covered. But we realized when we were trying to convey her internal life that they were her internal life, so that we had to live with and listen to them, which I relied a lot on Emily to do. And we also, while we had a point of view and we were going to tell it the way we wanted to tell it, we wanted to make sure that we were in harmony in some ways with the movements, which I was beginning to understand and knew a little bit about from my work at Open Society Foundations and other places, other colleagues who are here in the audience who have been, teachers to me on mental health and rights. So we did reach out to people like Jessie and others in the mental health and rights movement as we were finishing the film to show final cuts to see if there were any, we were attaching stigma, if there was anything about the imagery that we should think about. Not that we would necessarily have changed it, but we definitely wanted to make sure that we were consulting, and our future and the future of the film, we really hope to continue to partner in ways that you have allowed for, Karin, with mental health and rights groups.
Awesome. Well, I mean, the film is just so inspiring and such a beautiful piece. So, yeah, thank you for your hard work on that, the whole team. And that does kind of lead me to, beautiful films like these and how stories are told and how they affect and function and impact our communities. So I often talk about how stories about voice hearers are told in art and media, and how they can empower, like I said in the beginning, and create belonging, or they can take it away, right? So this is true for so many marginalized identities, so many. So it's so important about the kind of stories we're telling. So I want to ask Jessie more about this, as you work very deeply with social justice in the community and in the mental health institutions. Can you maybe speak to a little bit of how people with lives, as well as organizations, can help create more careful stories for diverse consciousnesses like Dory's, and how can we educate and support artists in building stories that create thriving and belonging? And then I know this is like a third little thing, and I'll repeat it if I need to, but like I want to hear from Julia and the team too about how we can, as organizations and people with lived experience, support storytellers like you who have the courage to tell the story differently.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I didn't mention in my introduction, so I'll just add for context to my answer that for work, I direct a mental health organization called the Institute for the Development of Human Arts, or IDHA, or IDA for short. And what we do is we train mental health providers and activists and community members in non-pathologizing, liberatory, creative, there's a lot of ways to describe it, but ways of understanding and describing mental health that operate beyond what we could call sort of a biomedical or medicalized framework. And I think to, answer that question, part of what is so important about, taking a more sort of careful approach to stories, and what I think advocates and organizations can do, is, for one thing, really, and Mad in America's work does this so well, so I'd actually give a plug and encourage people who aren't familiar to check out Mad in America, to understand what the dominant narrative is, first and foremost. I think often that dominant narrative of mental health or of voice hearing, of non-consensus reality, is so much like the water that we swim in. And I love, revisiting the film this evening, how Dory, she has such lovely humor about the expertise-ism, I would say. Are you, mad? Are you insane? And she's kind of like, well, it says it on a piece of paper, like somebody who has credentials says I am, so I guess I am. And I think that leads to another thing that I think is really important here, which is criticizing or taking a critical lens to what is expertise and what's defined as expertise. The work that we do at IDA is centering people with lived experience, expertise. Those are the people who have been through the system, who've been diagnosed, who are mad, who are disabled, who should be, at the center of everything, at the center of the stories, the solutions. And I think that is just number one when it comes to telling more careful stories. And one other thing that I would add briefly is, it sounds like, I know you two, you did this, and all the filmmakers consulting with people with lived experience and getting input. And also, I was reflecting on it too with the film tonight, how I think not reducing lived experience to a monolith is really important. The voice hearing community, or people who have all sorts of mental health experiences, who are trauma survivors, have extremely, I don't know if you want to add anything here, Karin, because I'm sure you would have something to share, just very diverse relationships to their voices. And I appreciate the moments where Dory refers to them as absolutely terrifying, and also really beautiful harmony. And I think for storytellers and people who want to help amplify the stories, to just be mindful not to sort of collapse into the diversity of the stories is part of the point.
Right.
Right. And I know that as I went through activism, like sort of that trial by fire, when you come out of the pain of the experience, being harmed the way I was for so many years, coming out into it's sort of an interesting journey, because you realize that the foundation of it is that everybody gets to tell their own story, and that is the base of it all. So the diversity of experiences is the core of the activism, and I think that Mad Pride does, and people like you do, and like Julia as a storyteller, and everyone giving us that space. It's just respecting somebody's right to tell their own story, and not have something imposed on them, so about their own experience, right? That's a lovely answer. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. And definitely check out IDHA, beautiful organization in New York. Jessie does an amazing job. It's a beautiful educational site. So Emily, as the animator, I mean, like, I'm an artist. Oh my God, like, just, I feel you, like, just how you must have, really engaged with her journals, engaged with the visuals, engaged with her relationship to her voices. And what was it like for you depicting this diverse consciousness, relating to it, like, I'm curious also, as a sub-question, did you ever try to imagine what it was like to hear her voices, or hear voices in general? Like, what was your, I'm just so curious about what your experience was as an artist.
Well, I really just tried to immerse myself in reading as much as I could, which was a lot, and trying to interpret and sort of, you're just sort of jumping in there and just trying to figure out, without really even pretending to understand it. You're just trying to be fluent in what that relationship seemed like from how she discussed it. And, and it is just sort of, you're sort of pretending in a way, but you're also just trying to absorb and then regurgitate what, how she felt about it. And she was very, in her diary writing was a lot like how she spoke, but just sort of littler and faster and longer.
There's some cute drawings.
So there was a lot of it. So it was sort of like diving into that ocean and then shaking it off and then sort of seeing what remains. And the way she drew her characters, and the way you didn't want to make them, they weren't always friendly, as she said. They weren't always, they weren't one thing. It was a dynamic relationship, and all of us have emotions. All of us have, thoughts and dreams, and I never tried to impose anything that I had. It was really just trying to imagine not even imagine, just trying to relive what I read.
Almost like channel, right? Like,
yeah.
Beautiful. So I'm sure we want to get to some audience questions, and I have two more very short questions, and maybe just we could do like each of you can answer, or any of you can answer quickly these last two questions. So and I'll try to say them as quickly as possible. All right, and it's like lightning round, guys.
Take your time, Karin. We're having so much fun.
Oh, okay. All right, well then I have this 10-page dissertation.
Just kidding.
Okay, so there's this moment in the film that I really love where she meets the black and white spider. I love that so much as a person. As an artist, that's how I've related and worked with the relationship with my voices and visions, is really seeing it, manipulating it, maybe manipulate's not the right word, but relating. And creating a story, and it's just a beautiful description of how that happened for her. And this was like a key, one of the linchpin moments in the film, I would say. So just real quick, like what was that moment to you guys? Like all of you, or any of you, like it's a broad question, but yeah.
I had been listening to her music for 15 years, and it was only when we started making the film that we delved into the archives. And when we found that film, I was like, you're right? I was like, this is the film. So just from a very, so thanks for raising it, and also to say that part of the film was like, the film opened with it, then it closed with it. We could not figure out where to put it to make sure that it had the most impact. But it was a revelation when we saw how clearly she was talking about her spider.
Yeah, and it's also like it's actually a pretty radical thing she did, right? Yeah, showing compassion for what was going on inside her.
Agreed.
Check.
Briefly to add, I wrote down while I was watching it tonight, I think during that scene, Dory says, like, I was exercising my demons instead of killing them. And I thought it was such a beautiful metaphor for, again, like, sort of the way that the dominant mental health system operates and versus, like, approaching things differently is, eliminating like the symptoms, like the experiences that make people uncomfortable. I've seen and experienced so much that if you're maybe expressing in a way that's uncomfortable for people, that there's this like, don't act like that or don't do that. And a lot of like the way that mental health treatment operates is kind of just like, let's get that to just go away. But then she describes like, well, if I didn't face the spider, it was gonna follow me for the rest of my life. And even though it isn't always easy and it's not always kind of a beautiful experience, that kind of like literal facing of your demons can really be what unlocks transformation. So
beautifully put. Yeah, agreed. And that word elimination, you think about a lot, it's like the opposite of compassion, right? It's I was making note during the film too that she was locked away by her father, and then she was locked away several times in a mental institution. And it seems like that being locked away is the isolation that creates forgetting a word, but like inability to face the things with compassion, rather. So last question. Okay, that was awesome. Thank you all. So first of all, I just want to say, like, I love Dory's smile. It's just a beautiful smile. And I love seeing it in the film so much. But my favorite part in the film is Spider One, but also she says, what if the voices don't give me peace because they are, what if the voices don't give me peace not because they are sick, but because they are healthy? Then all those learned experts, doctors, and nurses were wrong. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, because I feel like that's true in my experience. But in the best part, in the very next scene, we meet Joby, who I think shows her such unconditional, non-judgmental love around her voice hearing experience and her being in the world. And I remember saying at some point in my journey that there's no voice that love cannot transform. And this is tricky but true, because of course love is modeled for us. If we're encouraged to eradicate the voices instead of show them any love or compassion, right, that's what we're going to do. But if we're shown unconditional love like Joby did for Dory, we're going to find a new way, right? So I think everyone here on this panel, and I know other people in the audience, are sort of doing the work as an act of love. And I wanted to ask you all, especially how these kinds of artworks can amplify this non-judgmental love for marginalized identities and consciousnesses, how we're funding them, how we're letting it loose in the world, or how we're constructing this work. How is this art making in this work an act of love?
I mean, I'm experiencing an act of love right now. I mean, it's just like beyond my wildest imagination that I could have made this film and then be sitting here and having such amazing insights from all of you. So this is what it, this is the manifestation of what I wanted to do and how I wanted people to receive the film. So thank you.
You're the best, Julia.
Well, I'm just going to say something else about Joby. Is that it was really lucky for me that I felt, I mean, the whole thing being brought into it, like, okay, I'll do my best, you know. We did go up and visited the room with all the pages and the house, and that really helped to, at least with a framework for the whole thing. But just sort of meeting him was a shortcut to a lot of the meat of this story, because she wasn't alive, but the way he talked about her and just that whole context, and the way he said that, and you know, this makes perfect sense, you know, the animation part and the tiptoeing into her characters and her friends was the thing he was most worried about. And so, you know, it was clearly for me and for us to delve into that. There were so many ways to go wrong, and you just want to try and use all your sensibility that you can. But he was really helpful, you know, his sort of trust and his humor, you know, that you could really see how they navigated the acceptance. It was so unmistakable.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I immediately just would call him in conversation that beautiful man.
We're going to call him tomorrow. So.
Jessie, you want to finish this?
Yeah, I was gonna say also just shout out to Joby. I loved his scenes. I love the first time we meet him, I think, is when he's I'll tell them I said hello, to the voices. And I was just thinking about how there's people who, I don't know, there's a lot of great, trainings out there and ways to kind of have more sensitive approaches to, and I feel I don't think he took a training. I think he must have just had this innate, they were a perfect fit for each other. And the only thing I would add is that it's kind of straightforward, but also the point of it all, and I think Karin, you spoke to this, but being able to see stories like this in a film, right? Most of the time, probably almost all the other times that stories of voices and visions are depicted are pathologizing and stigmatizing. And so just for someone to watch this film, and whether they have a shared lived experience or they've just never thought about it that way, it opens up so much possibility to have a film like this out in the world. And also I imagine there are a lot of people watch it and go, okay, I could make a film about my experience too, and that makes me really excited.
Right, or they can turn to themselves and have compassion for their experience too. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So I think we want to take some, thank you also, before we transition to questions, thank you all for the wonderful insights and your work as well. So why don't we get some audience questions really quick, and anybody have any questions for the panel or anyone? Because
I don't have a question, but I just want to say that I absolutely love that for most of the
wait, can you wait for the mic so we can hear you?
No, I just talked.
No, talk really loud.
I absolutely love that most of the film is her talking and singing to us. So we hear that. We hear her story through her life, but it's through her own mouth and her own music. I just love that. So thank you.
Thank you. At a certain point when we showed a rough cut of the film, somebody said, can you please not make a film that has a bunch of dudes has Dave Grohl or Bono talking about how great Dory Previn is.
Yes, everyone thinks you.
We stuck to that.
Anybody else want to ask a question from the audience? And then we're going to go to online as well. Okay.
I'd like to know if there is a female artist today in both songwriting and perhaps temperament and bravery that you may perhaps not compare, but say has a lot of Dory's sensibilities as a personality with bravery, the type of songwriting, if perhaps you would name one.
I mean, it's not just for me. Do you guys have thoughts?
I know somebody who just wrote a children's book. And I'm blanking on the name because I'm nervous. But yeah, Tori Amos says she talks a lot about the muses, which I've always interpreted as, I hope I'm not outing her, but, you know.
I mean, in many ways, I mean, I don't want to get stuck in my own press releases for promoting this film, but I mean, I do feel like she was anticipating a lot of what young women songwriters are doing today, which are really confronting their complex, hard, and beautiful brains and talking about it, their mental health struggles very specifically. I mean, even like Billie Eilish or Lady Gaga, you know. I actually think of Regina Spektor sometimes too because of the humor. But I also do think that what was unique about Dory was that she learned her craft with the very best songwriters of the modern era. So there is nobody who can combine the craft of songwriting honed by collaborating with Fred Astaire and Harold Arlen to then, moving more into the confessional work. So in that way, I don't think she has an equal.
Anybody else on the
The
panel?
book is called Tori and the Muses.
Yes, Tor, thank you, Ari. Thank you so much.
I'm not sure that I have a question so much as a comment, which is when I came to watch this movie, I didn't really know what it was going to be about. And as I was watching it, to me, it was just a story about a woman's life and a wonderful career that she had. And it's only now sort of that we're putting it in the context of sort of these mental health struggles that she's having. But to me, that wasn't the focus of the movie, which I think is an incredible magic trick, because this movie, I think, is a perfect way to open up conversation about this without belaboring the point of it throughout the film. So I think you guys did an amazing job doing that.
I mean, just one thing to say is, thank you, by the way. And yeah, we didn't set out to make a mental health movie. And while we did consult, we were light on the consultations because we really wanted the story to come from her. So that was a real balance. But yes, thank you for that observation.
Unless you want to say anything, okay. I just want to make sure some people online get to ask some questions. So before we close, thank you for everybody in person for the questions. Zoe has some questions from people online.
So we have a question from Francine who's asking, where did you get the idea to make a moving art of Dory's drawings in her journals? What is the idea behind that?
I mean, I'll start by saying, and I'll hand it over to Emily, that Dory drew Mama, Max, and Lion. It's not as if we made them up. So you see, we tried to convey that we show you both Dory's drawings.
Well, yeah, they were so clearly a big part of her life that it wasn't imposed into the film. It was an important kernel of the film. So again, it was sort of the idea of giving it a place to be in relation to all the real stuff, the live action material. And, and to hope that her voice and her visualization came through.
And just quickly, when we had cuts of the film with just Dory looking gorgeous in those interviews, she's so eloquent and funny that you didn't feel what was going on. We had to find the internal story, and they were the internal story.
And I'll say also that I think the film really does have her, never having met her, but everything becomes sort of a composite that I really feel like the film has her energy and her sizzle and her, her humor and her depth, and it in a really fun way. And I think it's a real trick for your first thing, Julia. But it was because you really absorbed it and because you knew her and she put it on you.
I love the word sizzle. That's a good way to describe Dory. I just also want to mention this is like a 20-pound mic. I just want you all to know. Okay, one more question, or one or two actually from online. Yeah, I think we have a little. Just one or two. Yeah.
I think we have one more is from Rose Latino. What advice do you have for a novelist who wants to tell the story of another person who is a voice hearer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I guess that means I answered. As a person who hears voices, and also just in this the Mad Pride and Psych Survivor, the Sphere, and disability justice, all of these ways that there are things happening in the world right now that, and we have this big World Wide Web where we can find out about all this wonderful stuff. I mean, the IDHA is educating people every day about how to tell stories and how to listen to people's lived experience. I think at the base of it, what I see here is that there was a ton of love and empathy. It was connection and real connection. It wasn't that you were just trying to tell a story for your own means. I mean, this was a part of your life. I mean, Julia, you travel around singing Dory's songs. I mean, you're obsessed with this woman. So, I don't know, that's my answer.
I also just say do it. I mean, like, if this isn't the moment to make art that will help people understand the world more deeply and feel things, I don't know what moment will come. So just don't hold back.
That's it. I mean, that could be a good thing to end on, yeah? Or do we need any more questions, or that's it?
I think that's it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone on this panel. What a wonderful night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karin.
Have everybody be well, be safe, and take care of each other and yourself.